This is a Boilermaker. I don't know if y'all know what Boilermakers are, but they are on job sites where I was the CWI in the pipe fitters. So Boilermakers, they have a job to do in the refineries as well. That's where I know them from. I know they have unions. They are very good at their jobs as well. We've got one that been in it, I think, for 36 years. So he is ready to retire. They don't have a lot of debt. They think they have a lot of debt. They think they're covered up. They're frantic because they're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to retire? We got all this debt. And when I saw this Heloc right here, yes, it's to the max, but they're winners because they've already got the Heloc. They've got $1,000 in cash flow. I'm not worried about this couple. They're going to be fine. They just don't think they are. And that's the way we all start out, right? So with their cash flow being at $1,000, why? Before I ask this question, I have to tell you this. Okay, so their income one would go in to this 82,000, bringing their balance down to 73,000. Their expenses are 6840, but if I have 8,000 written up here, you all know why this dropped to 6840 on their expenses, right? Because when we did the income transfer into the Heloc, it knocked this payment out, right? Exactly, the Heloc payment. It went away. Now, why do I have the American Express 600? Why do I have that taken off of here as well? Remember how we can use one of our credit cards to pay all of our expenses? We'll gain the rewards off of this card that will help offset the interest on this account, which means that payment is gone because when the expenses come out, the income goes in, that satisfies that payment as well. That now becomes cash flow. Okay, so when you take away the Heloc payment and the American Express payment they currently have, their expenses are now at $6840, which means, yes, which means they now have $1,160 in cash flow that they did not have up here, which means that they're happy campers because they are now making a real dent on all of their debt. So now they would be at $2,160 for their cash flow. So I wanted to show why, because I'm getting this question a lot. I got this question from the Boilermaker. It just does not make sense to some people why doing an income transfer into a Heloc or a line of credit knocks that payment out. I get that that's very confusing. So if you have questions, please let me know. I'll try to clear that up. That's why I wanted to kind of break this down so you could see where the payments went. So with this person, they feel, like I said, they're almost frantic. Let's see, it looks like they've maybe $170,000 in debt. They have a home paid off. I mean, they have 2 homes, I think, paid off. So some people get really overly excited because they're like, oh, we're not going to be able to make this happen. But really, they're in great shape. So when you send me your numbers, if I send you an email back, actually, I have one I'm working on, and I got the numbers in last night, kind of glanced over them, and I wrote them back, and I said, you guys look like you're in great shape to me. We can work this out. We can give you a strategy, because when you are looking at your debt and your payments the way we were taught to look at them is let's just make that monthly minimum payment. Yeah. We're all totally stressed out because you have the bank who has told us how to do our income, and they want all of your income to go into your checking, right? So this is your income, goes into your checking, and then you might have a little bit to put in your savings or your 401k. But then when you've got your house payment coming out of the bank, you've got your utilities coming out of the bank, you've got your phones coming out of the bank, you've got your trash bill, your daycare, you've got your gas, car payments, groceries, everything's coming out of the bank. And that's why when you start even with a $2,000 income, you look at your income before you're paid that next week or that next 2 weeks, and all of a sudden it just dwindled all the way down to where you're a negative $10 because you had something bounce in the bank that you weren't expecting to come in, and you're not even made it to your next paycheck, and you're like, what is going on? The tugboat captain, if y'all saw that video, wow, he's in great shape. The very first conversation we had, the very first minute, he said, I make good money, but I am always broke, and I don't know what's going on. And so when I showed him this system, this is what happens, is because our income goes in, it sits here, and then things just come out, and it goes into the negative, and then guess what? We're hurting when it's time for that next check. So I have started, the 82,000 is this Heloc. it's at the max. She's going to throw in her $9,000, which will bring it down to $73,000. Then her expenses are going to come out throughout the month. So that would take her back up to $79,840. Then we've got to add the interest in. So you add the $342 back in here, and now she's at $80,182. Okay, so this is the first month completed. This is the high interest. Then in her second month, she'll come in, make another $9,000 deposit for month 2 on this plan. So you'll minus out the income out of the Heloc or whatever line of credit you're putting your income into. Then you're going to pay your expenses out through the month. Now remember, this isn't just a large chunk of $6,800 that's all of a sudden coming out. This means that this is going to be your total expenses for the month. They're slowly going to come out. Hopefully you're working to save some money here and there, so they'll leave a little extra in there. I do know this couple has a lot they can save in expenses that they're looking at. And I do know that they sometimes make more than that $9,000. So these numbers are an idea of where they're going to be in a few months if they just work the strategy. So the $71,182, and I added the interest up here instead of the expenses. So this is the interest for month 2, which takes her to $71,516. Then her expenses of $68,440. That takes her up to $78,356. Okay, so then you just keep moving your numbers. I try to do this much neater when I'm doing an actual board. Put in your $9,000 again in income. This is month 3. Then you're down to $69,356. Now, in 3 months, she went from worrying about this $82,000 because she's stressed out because it's to the max. In 3 months of doing nothing different, they haven't gone out and gotten another job. They didn't get frugal. We're going with the numbers they currently have. She is just putting her income now where it serves her instead of leaving it sitting in the bank. She has done what we call paycheck parking, and she has parked it in her line of credit that she can turn around and use as she needs it for these expenses. Okay, so by the time she gets to the third income, the balance is at $69,356, which this is going to raise her credit score because that's a lot of credit according to the banks, that they're looking for lower balances on your lines of credit. So that is definitely going to help her credit score as well. That's one thing. If you guys have a low credit score, bringing these balances down on these cards is going to shoot it up, and it doesn't take long. It depends on how much you're putting into the line of credit, how much credit you have that's not being used. There's all kinds of different things that you can look at that will raise your credit score, and this is the big way, is bringing those credit balances down. Well, when you're putting in your income $9,000 at a time or $4,000 at a time or whatever yours is, you're making huge dents in this, and when it records to go to the credit bureau, which I hear they're getting ready to get rid of credit bureaus, so I don't know how that's going to be when that happens, but if your balance is now down to under $70,000, of course that's going to look better on your score. So this helps everything. This gets you out of debt, but this also raises your scores. I have so many examples of people who have started with little baby cards and done this. Baby cards, like $500 income in there, you pay all of your expenses out. The credit card, people think that you paid off your bill, which makes them happy, which they report to the credit bureau, which zooms your score up, which gives you more credit. So we're always building credit because we want more lines of credit. So in this example, when she keeps doing income in and expenses out, she is going to continue this until her 9th month. So in month 9, she will then come over here and she's going to pay off these miscellaneous cards at $9,200. So when you have, okay, so her balance at her 9th month is going to be $67,238. Okay, then she's going to add in the $9,200. Now, what does that do to her cash flow? Yes, it takes her expenses down $250, which brings her cash flow up, which means that now her expenses will be $65.90. Does that make sense, everybody? Because we knocked off $250 that she no longer will have because she's paid off this debt. So this is now her expenses, okay? So when you add in the expenses, you add in the interest on this 76,000 because we're doing out of the high balance. Then you minus off her 9,000 income that she'll deposit in month 9. She is then going to be at 74,347. So she will start doing this again. Income in, expenses out. She's going to do this for another 7 months. So she will income in, expenses out for 7 more months. She's now at month 16. So she's at month 16. And her balance is going to be 59,710 because she's been doing nothing but just income in, expenses out. So when she's at 59,710, she's going to come over here and grab this $15,000 Discover, add it back in to her Heloc. That's going to bring her back up to 74,710. Then her income's going to come out again. This will be month 17, which brings her to 65,710. Do you see how we have never gotten back up to the $82,000? And she personally told me that her credit score is trash. And it's just because she's leaving all of these credit cards, all these credit lines are sitting at the max. And when she starts putting her income into this big one, it's going to free up some credit, which is going to raise her score. So if we keep doing this, expenses going out of the card, income going in, she is going to work this one for... I'm glad I have my notes. So this was month 17. Can you all see this? Hope you can. Then she's going to go to month 22. So 5 more months of income in, expenses out. Remember, because she paid off this $300 payment here, the Discover that was 15, it freed up that $300 payment, which raised her cash flow, lowered her expenses, and now her expenses are at $6,015. Look at that. So if her cash flow is up to about $2,683 compared to what she started with at $1,000. So now that $2,683 is doing nothing but going in and paying off her debt. And she is not doing anything. That's what's so amazing about Velocity Banking is you're not getting the extra jobs. You're not working a second job. You didn't change jobs. You didn't get frugal. You didn't decide, hey, I'm going to have to sell a kid, like Dave Ramsey says. You didn't sell your furniture. You didn't do anything. You're just putting your money, your income that you work for, you're putting it in a place that serves you now. And it serves you by paying your debt down, stopping the crazy interest charges, and raising your credit scores. So it is a godsend. When I say it's wisdom from the Lord, it is wisdom from the Lord. So she'll do that for 5 more months. So this is month 22. So she has worked 22 months. She has already paid off the $15,000 that was on the Discover. She's already paid off the $9,200, and not only that, we're at $65,10 now. So she's paid off quite a bit on this line of credit, just using it and working it like we're doing. So after into month 23 now, she'll start her income in, and her expenses will come out, meaning that in 8 more months. She can then turn around and pay off this $20,000 that is covering her on the $600 payment right now that she's using for expenses. She'll just flip over and start using another card for expenses and knock it off. Then these are 5 Capital Ones that total $25,000. So she knocks that $20,000 off. It really jumps her credit scores up. Then she is moving on to another card where she is now saving even more. So, you're talking 22 months, and then the 8 months when she pays this one off. She's moving so fast. So she's into her 31st month, less than 3 years. She's paid off 20, 35, 47, approximately 57, 60,000 plus whatever this balance is going to be, which is going to be at 68,163 in month 31. Do you all see how quickly all of these balances come down? And she's stressing, thinking that she's in trouble when she's not in trouble. She now knows where to put her money. She just puts it there, and then she goes off and plays with her kids. I mean, that's literally what it comes down to. Oh, by the time she gets done paying off this one, her cash flow is going to be up to over $3,200 a month, which you can imagine how fast that is going to start paying off her debt.